Friday on Daily Delivery. I am Michael Rand. Glad to be back for another day. Final show of the week. Hope everyone has a great day, a great weekend, all that good stuff. But first, listen to a great show. Bobby Nightengale Jr. from the Star Tribune joins me here in just a few minutes. Talk Twins. We'll get into a little bit of the TV stuff and other Rob Manfred comments from the All-Star game, a little bit of the game itself, but mostly talking Twins as they prepare for the post-break part of their schedule. Another, 68 games left in the season. They've already played 94, 96, so they have like 66 games left, something like that. So we'll get into that, where they stand, what they might do at the trade deadline here, less than 2 weeks away. Kind of anything they would need, a lot of teams are going to be looking for, but maybe there are some reinforcements, some opportunities for them to get better. So Bobby and I'll get into all of that here in just a minute. I've got a listener letter at the end of the show that I want to get to that speaks to the frustration of fans, Twins fans, as this TV situation continues ongoing. First, though, what I miss, I'm just going to run down a few little things, little medium-sized stories from the last 24 hours to kind of get us to the weekend. The Loons, Minnesota United. We'll start there again. Looks like they've maybe find some help. They need help. They've had some roster deficits this season. They've been definitely porous on defense, especially lately. 2 late goals surrendered to DC United the other day in that 3-2 loss that extended their winless streak to 9 games, tumbled down the standings after a really good start to the year. Still on the fringes of playoff contention, but the worst record in the league over the last month and a half. You got to fix that. So sounds like, according to reporting, Star Tribune, John Marthaler, they are in the final stages of adding Colombian center back Jefferson Diaz to the roster. And that will help. I mean, we don't know how good he will fit in here, but he's played 50 games over the last 2 years for a club in Colombia, a successful club in Colombia. So assuming he can come in here, get approved by MLS, he will be a factor here. So they're starting to sort out kind of this transfer window. John writing about how there's going to be more flexibility now in building the roster and how they have, close to a month in this transfer window to add some reinforcements and kind of thinking about different ways that they might add to the existing club. So in addition to getting a lot of their players back from international play, getting some players back from injury, they are now in the process of maybe adding even more in this transfer window. So maybe some hope yet for the Loons as they try to sort through the wreckage of these last, 6 to 8 weeks where the season has gone off the rails, kind of the season catching up to them and their lack of depth catching up to them. Small injury notes will dominate the rest of the first part of the show here. Dawson Garcia from the Gophers men's basketball team has a foot injury that he sustained in practice. Marcus Fuller reporting that. Not going to keep him out, for the season, it sounds like. The Gophers are saying he will resume basketball activities in September. That's still plenty of time before the season starts. But a good reminder that just like any team, the Gophers are certainly dependent on health. That's a theme kind of throughout sports, especially in this market, as Bobby and I will talk about in a little bit with the Twins. A lot of little nagging injuries there, and that's going to be a big story for the second part of their season. The post-break part of their season is, are those guys going to get healthy? Gophers certainly need Dawson Garcia if they're going to have any chance this season to kind of sustain the momentum they started last year. Now, we're not calling last year an overwhelming success, but they took a big step forward, right? They went from being a Big Ten kind of basement team to a team that was kind of on the fringes of NCAA tournament talk, went to the NIT, got some playoff experience, some postseason experience, but then lost some players unexpectedly from that team. Farrell Payne, Elijah Hawkins being the 2 biggest ones, the 2 most significant ones. So they need Dawson Garcia. So you don't want a foot injury, and he's had some foot and ankle problems in the past. You don't want these to linger because, obviously you need him, and obviously with a big man like that, problems lower down in the body can linger. So hopefully, for their sake, he is on the timetable they say he is, and he'll be back before any game time is missed. Speaking of a foot injury, promising Timberwolves rookie Terrence Shannon Jr. left the Summer League victory last night with a foot, I think it was a toe injury, a left toe injury, they are saying. Wolves won again. Leonard Miller, another big game, another 20-10 game. He seems to be racking those up in Summer League play after racking them up in the G League. I wrote about yesterday kind of some of those Summer League players who could be contributors this year, could be contributors in the future. Terrence Shannon Jr. definitely one of those guys that, based on what we've seen so far, based on what Chris Hines saw and talked about on yesterday's show, could be ready to contribute right away, and even more so down the road. 23, almost 24-year-old rookie who's got a lot of experience. He's like a full year older than Anthony Edwards right now. So think about that. Hopefully this isn't serious for his sake and the Wolves, because I do think he is a candidate to be a rotation player this year. So that bears watching. The Dawson Garcia news bears watching, as does the impact on the Loons in this transfer window.
Royal Credit Union's Smart Checking accounts offer no monthly fees and no minimum balance. Enjoy financial freedom when you open your Royal Credit Union Smart Checking account online at rcu.org/go-checking. Insured by NCUA.
Let's talk Twins and Major League Baseball today with Bobby Nightengale Jr. from the Star Tribune. Just got back from Texas, where it's pretty much hot everywhere right now. Everybody I talked to, we were talking about that before we started recording. Everyone was like, oh, just got back from a place that was brutally hot. And like here in the Twin Cities, it's like 75 and sunny. It's perfect. So are you glad to be back, Bobby?
Very much so. It's just glad to be in a place where if you go outside, you're not sweating immediately. So
yes.
Fortunately, Texas has a roof on their ballpark and air conditioning inside, so it wasn't miserable inside. But as soon as you walked out, even at like 11 o'clock at night, it was like, okay, it's still hot.
It's an oppressive heat. You're right, though. They were able to at least play inside. You had Willie Castro. It was kind of fun, making his first All-Star game appearance, something he won't forget. Carlos Correa not able to play in the game because he's dealing with some injuries. We'll get to that in a minute. Big picture takeaways from being at the game, and I'll certainly ask you a little bit more about Rob Manfred's comments as well.
Yeah, I mean, just the players themselves. I mean, it's cool. Carlos Correa didn't get to play, but he brought his kids for the first time, and he was excited. He got to introduce them to Aaron Judge. It's his 2-year-old's favorite player, and Aaron Judge took a picture with him and said his son was starstruck, had a kind of like a memorized speech saying, my name's Kylo Correa. Very nice to meet you, which for a 2-year-old, I mean, it's a long sentence. And said he got gun shy immediately as soon as he saw him and,
sure.
Went into fan mode. Aaron Judge. So yeah. Cool for him, to have the dad moment. And then Willie Castro, you could tell how much he appreciated first time being an all-star and kind of what it meant to him. I mean, it was funny. It was like he had a duffel bag, all players do to bring back after the game where they put their bats and all their stuff. But he had so much extra stuff in there, like anything that had his name and all-star on it was inside his bag, just because, you never know if you're going to get back, especially for a guy like that. But you could tell how much it meant to him, just how much he appreciated the opportunity to represent the Twins at the all-star level. And for a guy who, 2 years ago, he was a minor league free agent and couldn't even get a guaranteed major league deal. And now being an all-star, you could tell how much it meant to him.
Well, last time we talked, I think you were kind of, that's not lobbying for it, but you were saying, hey, a guy who from the Twins could deserve it was him. And you weren't wrong. It just seemed like, where would he fit into the roster? He's played like more than 10 games at 5 different positions. It's hard to find a spot like that for a player like that at the All-Star game, but that's pretty cool that they were able to recognize him in that way and get him onto the team, because he's honestly, like, where would they be without him?
Yeah, I mean, Rocco Baldelli always talks about it, and I don't think it's just lip service. I mean, every move they do is kind of with him in the back of their minds. I mean, they can make so many late game substitutions and just say, well, Willie Castro can move around. You can put him at short. You can put him at center. And, just playing those 2 positions alone, not many guys can do that, let alone everywhere else at a decent level. And anytime they've had an injury this year, I mean, Byron Buxton was on the IL. He plays center. Carlos Correa spent time on the IL. He's your starting shortstop. So, I mean, Royce Lewis went down and he was your starting third baseman until Jose Miranda heated up. So kind of did it all. So, I mean, credit to him. He's played in every game, which is not an easy thing to do these days. So, it speaks to kind of he's at the forefront of every move they make, even though there might be guys on the team more talented than him. He's the guy that every move is kind of based around.
Certainly some young talent around the league showcased at the game. It just kind of underscored how much. I know 5-3 is not necessarily a pitcher's duel, but just underscores how much good pitching there is right now, and how many guys just coming in and throwing just filthy stuff for 9 innings. What was your kind of thoughts on the game itself?
Yeah, I mean, it felt like a pitcher's duel. It felt like a pitcher's duel, even though it was a 5-3 score. I mean, it was the second fastest All-Star game, I think, in the game's history. Ohtani homered, which got the crowd excited. But I thought it was really cool. Paul Skeens was the starting pitcher for the National League. They do the draft in All-Star Week now, and with it being 1 year apart since he was the number 1 pick, I mean, pretty cool full circle moment for him, and kind of just shows how fast things move now. I mean, how fast guys get rushed through the minor leagues probably faster than they used to, and if you have talent, you're going to get to the major leagues pretty quickly. So I thought it was a good showcase for a lot of the young guys. I mean, Carlos Correa was talking about how old he felt with Bobby Witt Jr. and Gunnar Henderson and Ellie De La Cruz being the shortstops there, who are all in their low 20s. So, I thought it was a good showcase just in terms of the star power was there. Paul Skeens got to face Aaron Judge, Ohtani homered, and then a couple of big hits late, decided it for the American League.
Rob Manfred, Major League Baseball commissioner, talked Tuesday, the day of the game. Before we get into everybody's favorite local subject, which is the TV stuff, what else from his session stood out to you?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like they'll go back to, at least there's a strong consideration that they'll go back to all-star teams wearing their players wear their team uniforms instead of the one-stop all-star uniforms, which I think a lot of fans would be happy about. Kind of goes to the old school, what the all-star game used to look like. Automatic strike zone that's not going to come before 2026. There's a chance it's used for spring training next year, just to give major leaguers, the guys who haven't come up through AAA, because it is used in AAA, a chance to work with it. It'll be a challenge system when it does come up. But the issue now is it's hard to define a strike zone. I mean, it's for all the guys that, different heights, different sizes. Kind of finding an automatic, this is what exactly the strike zone looks like. That's where the issue has kind of been. That's why it's being slow played a little bit, because in AAA they've adjusted it, I think, 3 or 4 times, just because if you call it by the belt, it's a lot higher than umpires actually call it. And if you do it at the knees, there are some kind of fine points that make it difficult. So it's not going to come immediately to the major league level, the automatic strike zone. And Manfred did say that I thought interesting, 2028, there is a chance they would consider an Olympic break to allow major leaguers to play in the Olympics, just because it'll be in Los Angeles. You kind of want to show it in your home country. Baseball means so much. And so there is a chance they would kind of time the All-Star break with the Olympics 4 years from now to try to give it a chance to make Olympic baseball more of a thing.
Now, I don't know I probably should know this based on what is happening at, where they're experimenting at a AAA, but do you know when you go to the automatic strike zone versus what the umpires typically call, is there a higher percentage of strikes, balls, things like that they're kind of weighing as part of this? Because if you get too much of one or too much of the other compared to what you're used to, at least even if it is correct and fair, you could really influence how the game is played, how long the games last, things like that.
Yeah, if you talk to like the major leaguers, like Royce Lewis, obviously he's done rehab assignments there. He says it's a lot smaller of a zone, easier to draw walks. I remember when he did a rehab assignment down there last year, I think he had 4 or 5 walks in like a week on his rehab assignment. And he goes, I've walked more down there than I did in the big leagues. And he's like, there's guys who could put up Barry Bonds walk numbers with a small strike zone compared to, and so pitchers say that too. They're like, it's a little bit tighter than how it's called in the big leagues. And also with the challenge system, that's what they do use in AAA. I think it's a few days a week, but they might be doing it full time now. It is funny, like you'll see hitters, they'll challenge and they're so convinced that, that no way that pitch was called, should have been called a strike, and it is a strike. Right. And so there is some of that where it's like you can surprise hitters at least. It's not just the egregious calls. There are borderline calls that players don't always get to their side.
We do have to talk about the TV stuff. You wrote about it, then I wrote about it. Rob Manfred kind of delving into the subject of, how they proceed with regional broadcasts. And I think he was kind of tiptoeing around it a little bit because we've got this bankruptcy kind of hopefully finality coming for Diamond Sports in just a couple of weeks now, where we might know, hey, are they viable going forward or not? But at least reading a lot of what you wrote and what other writers were writing about it, it struck me as him to maybe taking on a little bit of a different tone, and like maybe understanding they had to be a little bit more patient with some of what they might want to do in terms of how long this is going to take to get teams onto the MLB side, if that's what they want. And then also presenting this idea of, hey, go ahead and stick with the RSNs if you want. If you think that's a better deal, go ahead and do that. That struck me as different than where they've been, but I'm interested to hear what you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think where his kind of tone maybe shifted is just he talked about he went to Sun Valley, Idaho. There was a big conference with all the tech giants that were there, all the media companies, all the streamers. So he was there along with other sports. And basically they kind of reiterated, hey, we have zero interest in just like streaming Twins games by themselves. Amazon does not just want just a Twins package. They want an entire sports package, which makes sense. I mean, you see it with the NFL, Thursday Night Football, NBA is getting their games will be on Amazon Prime Video more often. They're even getting playoff games. So I mean, there's interest in live sports. Obviously, that everyone sees that's how you drive viewers. If you want people to have to see things live sports is one of the main reasons to do so. But it has to be nationalized, and I think that's where he's kind of saying 2028. That's where he wants to get most teams on board. The Bally Sports situation, that'll decide itself. If Bally Sports hits bankruptcy and doesn't come out of it, obviously you're going to have a lot of rights that you're going to have to fill anyway. But if Bally Sports stays alive, then you're going to have to force teams to have more options. And I think that's where he's saying, if the Twins think, because I asked him directly, I mean, if it was up to him, where does he want the Twins next year? Yeah. And that's where he kind of gave the line, it's up to their choice. They have their local rights. God bless them. It's up to them what they want to do. But I think it's just one of those, there's not a ton of interest from the streamers in terms of just getting a small team package. They want at least half the league. And it's not going to happen for a few years unless Bally Sports hits bankruptcy and goes out of business. So I think that's where his tone has shifted just a little bit, saying there's just not a ton of interest. You're not going to make a ton of money doing this. And that's the frustrating part for the Twins probably.
Yeah, I mean, because I feel like if the Twins, in an ideal world, they would be able to go with the MLB package because they have distribution with Comcast. There's even been some rumblings. I saw some rumors, and I think it was written about by cord cutters, that there's maybe like some testing of an alternate channel, that there's an MLB channel for the Twins. I don't know if that's true or not, but it wouldn't be surprising if there's at least like some kind of contingency planning based on what could happen in bankruptcy court here in a couple weeks. In a perfect world, they would be able to have some sort of product, whoever it is, where, hey, they're on all the cable channels, all the cable carriers, including Comcast, and they also have a standalone streaming option for the local viewers or whoever wants it that just wants to pay. I think the going rate for MLB is $20 a month. Who wants to just pay that and still not have anything else? They don't have either one of those things right now, and I feel like those are two must-haves for 2025. But if the only place they can get them is MLB and they're not getting as much money there, the choice there feels like a hard one, and maybe not even much of a choice when you get down to it.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it, I mean, I think the streaming rights, Manfred said it, and I think everyone would probably agree, streaming is that's the most important part, is who has the streaming rights. And the Twins did not give that to Bally Sports this year, which is why you don't have games. Well, you can't just standalone stream on Bally Sports, the app,
right?
Like some other sports. So I do think like MLB does not want the Twins ever to give that to Bally Sports, just based off that's a pretty contentious relationship as they go through bankruptcy court. So but I mean, if you look at it, I mean, the reach, that's the most important thing. I mean, you look at how much the Twins value, they're going to get more money from Bally Sports this year, but if half the fans don't see the games, and obviously, the Twins will emphasize they did not expect Comcast not to ever come to an agreement with Bally Sports and them to be off the air on cable. So I think that's the spot the Twins are in. You look at it around the league. I mean, like the San Diego Padres are one of the three teams that are under the MLB production right now. They have 40,000 digital subscribers right around there. If you do the math, I mean, $100 a year subscription, that's only adding up to 4 to 5 million. Now you're going to get some more from like cable TV ads and some other ways, but that doesn't add up to like the Twins made 50 million plus last year. The Yankees make over $100 million off their TV deal. So I do think the streaming rights, that's the biggest fight. And I think I understand both sides. I mean, I get the Twins, you want to bring in more money. And I understand MLB side saying we have the reach, but we're going to keep those rights. We're not going to give those to Valley Sports.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. And I think, too, we could hear more from Manfred, the Twins, everybody once we get this hearing in about 10 days from now. So we'll see where this is all headed. I'm sure they'd love to be not talking about this every day or every year, but that's kind of where they're at right now. Let's shift to on the field as we kind of think about post break. I won't dare call it second half because I don't want to offend Mr. Royce and all those folks, but I agree that they've already played 96 games, so it's not the half of the season. I get it. 68 games left. They're in a pretty good spot, right? I mean, they have to feel like Cleveland is definitely within shouting distance. They're 4.5 back. They've got 8 games left with the Guardians this season, if I'm not mistaken. So a chance to catch up. Now that cuts both ways. They're 0-5 against Cleveland so far this year. So that could either be a good or a bad thing. But where do you evaluate where they are right now? And then maybe we'll get into a little trade deadline stuff here in a second too.
Yeah, I mean, I think when they're healthy, they kind of showed their potential over the last month and a half or so, and they've been relatively healthy. Just the offense, it's kind of lived up to before the season. That was kind of what everyone was talking about was, hey, if Byron Buxton and Carlos Correa and Royce Lewis are healthy, we'll have one of the best offenses. And, Royce Lewis has been down for most of the season, but other guys have stepped up. Willie Castro, Jose Miranda, Carlos Santana has been pretty solid offseason signing. So, I think that's the exciting part. I mean, obviously there's pitching that they can improve upon. Starting rotation probably hasn't been as good as they would have hoped through the first part of the season. But looking where they are, I mean, the division's a lot more competitive. I was talking to a lot of Cleveland Guardians All-Stars at the All-Star game, and a few of them brought it up. They're like, hey, remember at the beginning of the season when we were supposed to be playing in the worst division in baseball? And, now Cleveland's, as good as anybody. The Twins are having a good year. Royals are right there. So they like to point that out, but they kind of expected a dogfight. And I think it's one of those. Twins are in position. Guardians, I think on a talent level, you'd say that I would think the Twins would have more talent than the Guardians. But Guardians just keep winning. They win a ton of close games. Their bullpen's so dominant that they feel like if they have a lead after 6 innings, they're going to win. So it'll be fun. I mean, it'll be curious at the trade deadline's coming up just to see kind of what moves are made between the Guardians, Twins, and Royals, just to see how that affects the other teams.
Absolutely. Before we get to that, I mean, you had a couple I don't feel like they're major injuries. Like I feel like Lewis has probably got to be kind of close to getting back. I think he's got a bat day this weekend, so maybe they're going to try to get him back for his promo day. Correa with the new plantar fasciitis in the other foot. Miranda's on the injured list. Buxton crashed into a wall. I mean, those are important players. Where do you see their status coming out of the break?
Yeah, it felt like for them, it was fortunate the timing of the All-Star break. I mean, a lot of nagging injuries just kind of built up over the last 3 or 4 days. But you get 5 days off. I don't know if any of them I would expect to end up on the injured list that aren't already there. Okay. Maybe Correa is probably the one to watch, but he wanted to play in the All-Star game, and I think it was just one of those. Had he had a chance to play in San Francisco before the All-Star game, I think he would have had the go-ahead, but just the fact he missed the last 2 games probably cost him the opportunity. But Byron Buxton pinch ran the last game, and that was at least a good sign that he wasn't completely down. And Jose Miranda, I think they put him on the injured list just to kind of time it up, just taking advantage of the days that he's off. And as you mentioned, I think Royce Lewis, I would expect him back sometime this month. So I think they're in a good spot. Brock Stewart's already on a rehab assignment, and he'll be back soon to help out the bullpen as well.
How does that kind of play into what they might be doing trade deadline wise? You kind of referred to it. We're only less than 2 weeks from the deadline. Obviously, every team wants to improve, but everybody's kind of looking for the same stuff to a certain degree. How aggressive will they be as buyers, and how aggressive should they be in terms of trying to add to what they already have?
Yeah, I don't think they'll be overly aggressive just based off the fact they're 4.5 games behind Cleveland. I think it's a different approach when you're ahead in the division and you're thinking how can we best fortify for a playoff series versus if you're in a wild card game and you're only playing 3 games. I do think it changes your strategy a little bit on your aggressiveness. Also payroll. They were tight on payroll into the offseason last year. I don't think there can't be a ton of room. It's not like attendance is way up and they have all this extra money and the TV deal has been going perfectly. And, I don't foresee where they could just add a ton of salary that they didn't already have already. And two, I mean, I just don't know, like position player wise, I feel like they have depth at most spots. Maybe you could nitpick and say like a left-handed hitting outfielder. But Matt Wallner and Trevor Larnach have been there. And is there a huge bat upgrade out there? I don't know. And then when you look at the starting pitching market, I mean, I do think the Twins have depth pitching wise. Perfect world, you'd add a frontline starter, but I don't think there are a ton of guys out there. I remember last time I was on, we talked about Garrett Crochet from the White Sox, who's already thrown more innings this year than he's ever thrown in his career. So chance he ends up as a reliever for the rest of the year just to make sure he makes it through the season and into the playoffs. Outside of him, I mean, there's not a ton of difference maker starting pitchers out there on the teams that are, definite sellers, teams that have struggled this year. And so I think that's the tough part for the Twins is, if you had a number 4, number 5 starter, does that really make a difference in terms of your playoff push? Is that a huge upgrade over Chris Paddock or, even the guys in the minor leagues, David Festa? They just promoted one of their top prospects, Zebby Matthews, to AAA. So I don't know, depth-wise, I think they're in a decent spot there. You always say that there's always risk in saying you have enough pitching depth, but I do think they're okay depth-wise. It's just frontline-wise, and those are the harder deals to pull off.
Yeah, I mean, the best trade they could make probably is trading 2024 Pablo Lopez for 2023 Pablo Lopez. I mean, if you look at their team ERA, if he was having the kind of year he was having last year, their starter ERA goes from like 25th to 12th. And I know that a lot of his, other numbers, his kind of, the comparables, everything that you look at, the inside the numbers are kind of tracking just fine. But a guy of his caliber still shouldn't have an ERA over 5. Like his struggle years or his, when he's getting a little unlucky, I don't feel like he should have a 5.11 ERA. Just not enough consistency, not enough dominance. How do they get him back on track?
Yeah, that's the big question. I mean, he's called it the most, difficult season of his career. And it's weird. Like when you watch him, it's like, okay, he'll pitch, say he has a 6-inning start. It's like 4 of those 6 innings are usually fine. And then the 2 other innings, he's walking guys and leaving like a pitch over the plate and then he gets crushed for a homer. I feel like he's paid the price for every mistake he's made. That's the weird thing. I mean, I know there's a lot of things he's working on behind the scenes just in terms of trying to become more consistent. But I like you mentioned, I mean, trying to trade for like a guy like that, I don't know if there's a guy out there that could be as dominant as Pablo Lopez when he's at his best. I mean, you saw it last year in the postseason, what he did for them, shutting down Houston in Houston. If he can get back on track, I mean, him, Joe Ryan, Bailey Ober, that's not a bad top 3. Can you find someone on the trade market that would jump those guys if Pablo Lopez could recover? I think that's probably what's on the mind of the front office in this last 2 weeks is, can we add a guy into that group? No, Pablo Lopez doesn't recover. That's another question.
Yeah, it is. And it's probably a bigger question going forward too, because he's, expected and counted on to be a rotation stalwart for years to come based on age, contract, things like that. Well, Bobby, we'll see where they wind up. Season resumes Saturday, 2-game series against the Brewers. Long 5-day break for all these players, but I guess that's good and good timing for the Twins. Good timing catching up with you as well. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you again soon.
Sounds great. Thanks for having me.
Great stuff from Bobby. As usual, you can read Bobby and Phil Miller's kind of second half reports, kind of getting ready for the next phase of the season that starts Saturday against Milwaukee. Read that, Star Tribune and StarTribune.com. ESPN piece that I checked out, kind of talking about the contending teams in baseball, kind of has the Twins pegged about right. Kind of in the mix, a true contender, but health will be the story for the Twins in the second half of the season. I think that's true. I think they're going to be, you're going to have to watch how fast does Royce Lewis come back, and does he stay on the field? Can Byron Buxton, keep his relative health? Same with Carlos Correa, even though both of them had kind of some nagging minor stuff pop up at the end of the first part of the season before the break. Got to get Jose Miranda back and hitting as he was. It's a lot of guys who were doing a lot of damage who now you have questions about. If those guys are healthy, their lineup is real. They are for real. They are scoring runs. They're as good as most teams on most nights at the plate. Need more from Pablo Lopez, like I talked about with Bobby. Can they add anything else? Maybe a bullpen arm, something else that's going to help them down the stretch, maybe track down Cleveland or at least solidify a wild card spot. Let's finish with the cooler. Got a letter, email from a listener who just kind of the common theme, mad about the Twins Comcast TV situation, but he is madder than most. He says, I used to be a big baseball fan and love baseball. I am so sick of these rich, greedy bleeps that are stopping fans from watching baseball. It's nothing but pure greed, and they could care less about the fans. Most fans work hard all day and look forward to watching a game at night, but right now they can't. So I say this to the Twins, you can take a flying bleep at a rolling donut. It's time that they learn that the fans are the ones that are making the owners all these millions of dollars. I think I've gotten a lot of emails. That one's probably more on the aggressive side, but I think that expresses a lot of the sentiment. People just want to watch the games, and they are caught in this kind of between a lot of entities with a lot of money at stake, and they are the ones suffering. So I just wanted to illustrate that once again. I know we've done it before. I know I've read letters like that before, but that is where we're at, where we're almost 2.5, 3 months into Comcast not showing the Twins games. You can tell me all you want that there's other options. A lot of people have had Comcast for a long time. They're not changing. They don't understand why you can't get a Twins game on the thing they've had forever, and I don't blame them. That'll do it for me today. That'll do it for me for the week. Royce should be with me on Monday for a fun, full show. Plenty of other good stuff next week. Until then, enjoy your weekend. Back at it again on Monday.